When gunshots echoed through the corridors, everyone was running in panic. Teachers screaming, students trying to hide. But Jackson Williams stopped. For the first time in 15 years, he dropped his cleaning supplies and walked forward. At that moment, no one knew that the school's most insignificant man was actually the only person who could save their lives. Welcome to Human Tales. Before we begin this powerful story, tell us in the comments which city you're watching from today. And if you believe stories like this need to be heard, hit that subscribe button. These stories matter. The cold corridors of Denver Lincoln High School were filled with the voices of students escaping the sharp March wind. It was only 7:15 a.m., but the school was already alive with activity. Jackson Williams quietly climbed to the second floor as always. His cleaning cart squeaked as it went up the stairs, the wheel sounds echoing through the corridors. The 52-year-old man was completely invisible in his gray uniform, worn black boots, and faded navy cap. For exactly 15 years, Jackson had repeated the same routine. Every morning he left home at 4:45, drove to school in his old pickup truck, and started work at exactly 5 o'clock. He'd never been late, never taken a sick day, never complained. Students called him the cleaning guy, and teachers often didn't even notice he was there. Walking down the corridor, 16-year-old Emma Martinez noticed him. Emma wrote for the school newspaper, always observing her surroundings, curious and intelligent. She had noticed something odd about Jackson's walk. There was an alertness in his movements that an ordinary janitor wouldn't have. He constantly scanned the environment, checked exits, seemed to mentally calculate people's positions, as if he was ready for something to happen at any moment. Strange, Emma thought, watching Jackson. This man has been here for 15 years, but nobody knows anything about him. Emma had glimpsed a small tattoo on his left arm when he took off his cleaning gloves. It was very faded, almost invisible, but looked like an eagle or maybe a military badge. At lunch, she saw Jackson in the cafeteria, sitting alone at a corner table, eating a sandwich he'd brought from home. He didn't make eye contact with anyone, but Emma noticed he was actually mentally mapping the entire room. Even the way the man ate was striking. Very fast, but also very careful, as if ready to be interrupted at any moment. It was like he was programmed for survival. Jackson was especially restless that Tuesday morning. He didn't know exactly why, but his sixth sense, developed over years on battlefields, was telling him something. The air was different. Security guard Mike Patterson was more distracted than usual. Principal Harrison was tense. And early in the morning, he'd seen an unfamiliar vehicle around the school. At 11:20, someone in a black hoodie entered through the main entrance. The man was about 19 to 20 years old, medium height, thin, but there was determined purpose in his movements. His backpack looked heavier than normal. Security guard Mike Patterson showed him the visitor register, but the man didn't answer. He just tried to push past Patterson. "Hey, hold on," Patterson said, standing up. "You can't walk around here without registering." The man stopped, slowly turned, and looked at Patterson. There was cold determination in his eyes. Then he took something out of his bag. The first gunshot echoed at 11:23 a.m. Jackson immediately dropped the brush in the bathroom. This sound was no different from the sounds he'd heard in Afghanistan 20 years ago. His heart immediately accelerated, but his hands weren't shaking. His breathing wasn't becoming irregular. This was a reflex acquired through years of training. Muscle memory kicked in. Panic had started on the second floor. Students were screaming and running to classrooms. Teachers were locking doors and drawing curtains. Principal Harrison's trembling voice came over the school speakers. "Attention, all students and staff. We are now in lockdown. This is not a drill." Jackson left his cleaning cart and ran to the emergency cabinet at the end of the corridor. This was a special cabinet that nobody had opened for 15 years, that only Jackson had the key to. Inside, he kept a black radio, tactical flashlight, first aid kit, and one more thing. Something he'd never used for 15 years, but always kept there. Active shooter situation at Lincoln High School. All units responding. ETA 8 minutes, the police radio said. 8 minutes. Jackson knew that 8 minutes was too long in a school environment. Dozens of people would be left to die in that time. Jackson went to a special locker in the basement with a master key he took from his uniform pocket. This locker wasn't even on the school's plans. Jackson had made it himself 15 years ago. The things he kept inside were remnants of Jackson Williams's past life. Tactical vest, night vision goggles, communication equipment, and most importantly, his personal weapon that he'd refused to surrender 15 years ago, a Glock 17 with tactical modifications. When Jackson saw this equipment, it was as if a machine part had activated. His hands automatically put on the tactical vest, checked the weapon, tested the radios. Staff Sergeant Jackson Williams, U.S. Army Rangers 75th Regiment, was back. The attacker, Tyler Morrison, was 19 years old, graduated from Lincoln High School 2 years ago, experiencing social isolation and mental problems. He had an AR-15 rifle in his hands, extra magazines on his belt. His plan was simple: cause as much damage as possible. Tyler was now advancing on the second floor, trying to force the door of classroom 2A. Inside, history teacher Mr. Rodriguez was hiding behind desks with 23 students. The children were crying. The teacher was trying to calm them. "Open this door," Tyler shouted, starting to hit the door with his rifle butt. At that moment, a shadow appeared at the end of the corridor. When Tyler turned around, he saw someone in a black tactical vest, face masked, holding a weapon. Jackson was observing Tyler from 50 meters away. The attacker's position, the type of weapon, movement style, mental state, he analyzed everything within seconds. Tyler was inexperienced, cornered, panicked, and acting amateurishly. For Jackson, he was an easy target. "Drop the weapon," Jackson said, with 20 years of command authority in his voice. Tyler was surprised. "Who the hell are you?" Tyler shouted, pointing his weapon at Jackson. Jackson didn't answer. He just took position, feet shoulder-width apart, weapon held with both hands, breath under control, target acquired. "Last warning, put the weapon on the ground," Jackson said. Tyler decided to shoot at Jackson, but his movement was too late. Jackson's reflexes he had developed through 20 years of combat experience. First shot hit Tyler's AR-15. The weapon shattered and flew to the other end of the corridor. Second shot wounded Tyler's right leg, damaging muscles and bringing him down, but creating no life-threatening danger. Tyler fell to the ground, no longer had a weapon in his hands, and was screaming in pain. Jackson approached Tyler with professional, tactical steps, moved his weapon to a safe distance. While Tyler was writhing in pain, Jackson opened his radio. "Lincoln Control, active shooter neutralized. Second floor, suspect wounded and contained. Request immediate medical assistance." A surprised voice came from the police radio. "Who is this? Please identify yourself." Jackson hesitated. He had to say the identity he hadn't used for 15 years. This is Staff Sergeant Jackson Williams, U.S. Army Rangers. Situation is under control. The door of classroom 2A slowly opened. Mr. Rodriguez stuck his head out. Couldn't believe the scene when he saw it. Students started coming out one by one. When Emma Martinez saw Jackson, she froze. This was the same man she'd seen in math this morning, but now he looked completely different. His posture, way of moving, tone of voice, his gaze, everything had changed. Aren't you Jackson?" Emma asked, her voice trembling. Jackson took off his mask. The same tired face, but now there was a different light in his eyes. These were eyes that had seen war, faced death, learned to survive. "Yes, I'm Jackson," he said in a calm voice. Police came 3 minutes later. When the SWAT team saw Jackson, they first pointed their weapons at him. "Drop your weapon. Hands where I can see them." Jackson raised his hands, slowly put his weapon on the ground. His movements were calm because he'd experienced this procedure hundreds of times before. SWAT Commander Captain Martinez approached Jackson. When he saw the man's tactical vest and professional posture, he stopped. "Sir, what's your background?" Jackson silently opened his tactical vest and showed his badge collection on his chest. Bronze Star, Purple Heart, Combat Infantry Badge, Ranger Tab, and several Special Operations badges. Captain Martinez held his breath. "Sir, these badges belong to the 75th Rangers." Crowds were gathering in the schoolyard. Ambulances, fire trucks, media vehicles, police vans. Students were reuniting with their families. Jackson was trying to quietly leave the scene, but Captain Martinez stopped him. "Staff Sergeant Williams, please wait. My commander wants to speak with you." Jackson replied, "I'm no longer Staff Sergeant, just Jackson." In the evening hours, everyone had gone home. Jackson remained alone at school. He'd taken off his tactical vest and put his old gray uniform back on. Emma Martinez returned to school with her parents. They found him in the gymnasium, sitting on the floor, leaning against the wall, covering his face with his hands. "Jackson," Emma said softly. Jackson raised his head. His eyes were red, tired. "Why did you find me? I'm just a janitor." Emma's father, retired police officer Carlos Martinez, sat next to Jackson. "Brother, what you did today was extraordinary." Jackson laughed bitterly. "I just did my job." Then he started talking, his voice trembling. "I went to Afghanistan in 2003 with the Rangers. I was a team commander. I had an 8-person team, the best, the people I trusted most." His voice was breaking. "On our last mission, there was a leak in intelligence. The Taliban knew our exact position. We were ambushed. It was a 6-hour firefight. Air support didn't come. Artillery support didn't come." Tears started running down his cheeks. "I lost 6 friends that day. Only Corporal Williams and I survived." Carlos was surprised. "Williams?" Jackson nodded. "Yes, James Williams. He was 20 years old. I lost him too, in the hospital, 3 days later." Emma was beginning to understand. "That's why you came here." "Before Williams died, he told me something. My brother is trying to become a teacher in Denver. If you ever run into him, look out for him, Jackson." "So I came here." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "Who's his brother?" Jackson replied, "Mr. Rodriguez, the history teacher, James's older brother. I've been trying to protect him for 15 years. The next morning, everything was different at Lincoln High School. Jackson came on time, but nobody considered him invisible anymore. Students looked at him with respect and love. When Emma saw him, she ran to him. "Jackson, could I interview you for our newspaper?" Jackson smiled, his first real smile in 15 years. "What will you ask, Emma?" She replied, "Everything, your real story. But I'll only write what you give me permission to." Principal Harrison approached with an official document. Jackson, they're offering you a special security director position. Salary increase, your own office, status. Jackson examined the documents but shook his head. Thank you, but I love my cleaning job. But I can give students defense lessons as a volunteer. Emma's eyes sparkled. Really? Jackson replied, really. But I have one condition. Nobody will call me a hero. I'm just Jackson. Janitor Jackson. That afternoon, Mr. Rodriguez found Jackson. Jackson, I don't know how to thank you for what you did yesterday. Jackson looked at him with deep sadness in his eyes. Mr. Rodriguez, do you know someone named James Williams? Mr. Rodriguez's face suddenly changed. James is my brother. He died in Afghanistan in 2008. How do you know him? Jackson took a deep breath. And I was his commander. Mr. Rodriguez froze. You're Jackson? James always talked about you in his letters. Jackson's voice trembled. I couldn't protect him. Mr. Rodriguez hugged Jackson with tears in his eyes. He always wrote that he was safe with you. You protected him for 18 months because of your care. Jackson was surprised. Is that why you worked here for 15 years? Jackson nodded. I made a promise to James. Over the weekend, news about the incident was broadcast in local media. But at Jackson's request, his name and photo weren't published. Emma published an article about Jackson in the school newspaper titled Silent Guardian. The article attracted attention at the state level and brought Emma a journalism award, but she never published Jackson's real name or photo because Jackson wanted it that way. Real heroes don't make noise, Emma, Jackson had said. They just do their jobs and leave. The school administration prepared a special plaque for Jackson reading Jackson Williams, Lincoln High School Silent Guardian. When Jackson saw the plaque, he laughed. Silent Guardian, huh? I like this. Months passed. Jackson kept his promise and started giving weekly defense lessons to students. These classes became very popular. What Jackson taught wasn't just physical defense, but mental preparation, leadership, teamwork, and most importantly, taking responsibility. In a crisis moment, Jackson would tell students, be the person who creates solutions, not panic. Be the person who protects, not runs. Emma regularly attended Jackson's classes. Jackson paid special attention to her because he saw potential in Emma as a journalist to stay calm and show leadership in crisis moments. During Tyler Morrison's trial, Jackson was called as a witness, but Jackson bore no grudge against Tyler. This kid is sick, Jackson had said in court. He needs treatment, not punishment. Tyler's family thanked Jackson. You could have killed our son, but you only wounded him, and now you're speaking for him. Jackson had given them this answer. I was trained to take lives, but what I really learned was to protect life. Years later, Jackson still worked at Lincoln High School. He was now in his 60s, but still strong. New students knew who he was, but Jackson still approached everyone with the same humility. One day, a young student asked him, Jackson, do you think I can be a hero? Jackson gave him this answer. Son, you're already a hero. You're just waiting for your opportunity. And every morning, Jackson still came to school at 5 a.m. because he knew that real heroes never retire. They just continue their watch. Sometimes heroes don't wear medals. Sometimes they don't wear uniforms. Sometimes hearts that have changed the world beat under cleaning uniforms. Jackson Williams chose to remain invisible for 15 years until the day he needed to become visible. And from that day on, nobody at Lincoln High School ever looked at a janitor the same way, because now they knew real power waits silently, and when necessary, it acts. Jackson Williams' story reminds us that the greatest heroes are sometimes the quietest ones, and the most valuable protection is the one that's never noticed. On the plaque still hanging in the school corridors, it says, Jackson Williams, Silent Guardian. Real heroes don't make noise. They speak only through their presence. And every new school year, new students hear Jackson's story and learn. Greatness is not in positions, but in character.